optimization of IVPT parameters. Now, the first one would be the selection of dose. With your practice, how do you select the target dose? And does it need to be clinically relevant or not? And in the morning, we heard about sunscreen lotion is 2 milligram per centimeter square. And if we refer to the PSU of acyclovir cream, we are talking about a target dose being between 5 to 15 milligram per centimeter square. What are your thoughts on selecting the target dose?
I think selection of the target dose is extremely important because if you select a dose that's too large and you alter the evaporation profile too much, then maybe you're not getting the answer that you want. So I think that 5 to 15 range is certainly something that's doable reproducibly. Have seen people use much more than that, and if it takes a really long time for your semi-solid formulation to evaporate, that might not be as representative as you would want for that kind of study.
One could start with the bounds. Your lower applied dose has to be sufficient to match your ability to quantify the drug that penetrates. So it may be a function of your LOD or LOQ. The high end is when it's no longer a finite dose and you're saturating the skin or ending up with steady state kinetics. The question really is, where's the sweet spot in between? Is that 5, 10, 15, 20? And that's part of the methods development step to find out where in that range are you within those boundaries.
If you're considering anything above 15 milligram per centimeter square, please do a drying rate study. That would be my suggestion. Just take different doses and look at the drying rate, and then you would know where to stop.
Great, thank you. So once the dose amount is identified, and I think majority of time, what I'm hearing from the panel is, the 5 to 15 is for most of the drug product, should be fine without any concern. But there are drug products which needs specific consideration. So once you have identified the target dose, how do you select the dosing procedure, since the dosing procedure plays an important role in the permeation profile, and what kind of efforts are made to have a consistent dosing procedure across the cell? And there are questions in the chat about, how do you, I think in the past there were multiple presentations from the FDA folks, and we presented the data about, how if you change your dosing procedure, it will impact your permeation profile. So what is the recommendation? How do you apply the dose, and how do you apply consistently? Do you rub the product, or you just use the glass vial? Any thoughts on dosing procedure aspect?
Well, some of this can be product specific, because just applying an ointment is it's a pain. So certain ways work very well for solutions, or less viscous formulations. You can drop it on there with positive displacement pipette. If you're doing that kind of thing, be careful about rubbing it onto the skin with those little tips, because you can damage it. So ideally, if you can come up with a procedure where it's accurate across different product types, allows a little bit of shearing, and controls the dose to well-controlled volumes or weights, that's ideal.
This may be the.
Go ahead, Paul.
Sorry. This may be the most critical variable of the entire process, is the dosing process. Having well-trained staff, having staff being consistent, and having the same staff do every batch of skin within a study will help minimize variability in dose application.
Absolutely. I think the training is quite important. The tools that you have are quite important. It's also the balance. I think if all what you just said was the balance between the quantity, the target dose versus the release profile. And this morning, Dennis also said about clinically relevant procedures as well. You don't put in real life a blob of ointment and just walk around. You try to slightly spread it and make sure it absorbs. So the finite dose with a proper spreading, particularly when we're trying to do these IVPT studies for NCE, new formulations, new molecules, it has to be a little bit relevant by using a positive displacement pump and then dropping it onto the piece of skin and then let the skin take care of the diffusion. Perhaps in real life is not truly relevant. So we try to do in our shop as much as possible between that 5 to 15 milligram per centimeter square, but also use the weight control HPLC vials and then try to spread gently. If it is liquid enough, like John said, you can use the displacement pump. You don't need to use the vials to spread it out.
Thank you for your feedback. And I think we all acknowledge the inherent variability associated with the skin and IVPT data. And I mean, if you are following, like, if the one person or the one individual is applying the consistent dose across the cell, what ultimately we want is when we look at the submission, we just want to assure that the study is well adequately controlled, and especially with the statistical analysis, which we will be talking in the next session. We the way we assess the data is using the reference scale, so we know that we are only encountering we are only capturing the variability associated with the data or the drug product performance or related to the IVPT, but not because of the not well adequately controlled study. So if you do the poor job on conducting the study, basically you are just inflating the variability. And I'm not going to go in a statistical part, but there are a lot of concerns about when we see there is a poor control on the study design. With that being said, we can move to the next topic. The next one is the selection of sampling interval. How would you select sampling intervals in order to capture the high temporal resolution of the permeation profile that is mainly to adequately capture the Jmax?
That has to be explored in your method development. I mean, it's really critical to get that Jmax, so you've got to get essentially points before and points after to be able to characterize it. Typically what we do is we run out longer duration studies to get some sense of what that profile will be. It's going to be unique to that product. Try to identify it and then develop it from there.
With John, in some of the studies, we initially started off with sampling every 4 hours, but we saw the Jmax at 4th hour, the first sample itself. So then we had to go back and modify and take a sample at an earlier time point so that we have at least 1 point on the up curve and then, hit the Jmax. Yes, it's a part of the method development, I agree.